Captain's Log. Galactic date 4532.7. Commander Blort of the xenobiological research vessel Curious Tentacle. We have arrived at Sol 3, locally known as Earth. Classification: Death World. Threat level: extreme. Mission: standard observation and data collection. May the cosmic creators have mercy on our souls. I clicked off the recorder and gazed at the swirling blue-green orb through our view screen. Such a beautiful planet. Such a shame it was populated by the most terrifying species in the known galaxy. Commander, we're in stable orbit and cloaking systems are functioning at optimal capacity, announced Engineer Rigel, her 4 appendages dancing across the control panel with practiced precision. The bioluminescent patches on her forehead pulsed with a calming blue glow, contradicting the nervous twitching of her eye stalks. Excellent work, Rigel. Status report: Science Officer Plex? Plex swiveled all 3 of his eye stalks toward me, the middle one blinking rapidly, a sure sign he was processing data at an accelerated rate. Preliminary scans confirm our intelligence reports, Commander. The humans are exactly as documented. They inhabit a planet with 1.3 times our standard gravity, breathe oxygen and extremely corrosive gas, and their bodies are filled with acid and bacteria. They actually consume other life forms by dissolving them in this acid. Regal made a gurgling sound, her species equivalent of a gag. How have they not been quarantined by the Galactic Council? Because I explained with practiced patience, they haven't achieved faster than light travel yet. Standard protocol is non-interference until a species reaches that technological threshold. Our job is merely to observe and report. But Commander, Plex protested, his voice rising an octave. Did you read the file about what they do for fun? They jump out of flying machines with only fabric to slow their descent. They climb frozen water formations with sharp metal tools. Some even ride on boards across mountains of crystallized dihydrogen monoxide at speeds that would liquefy our internal organs. I'm well aware, Science Officer. That's precisely why we're here. The Galactic Scientific Committee believes understanding human resilience could revolutionize medical science across the galaxy. If we don't get ourselves killed first, muttered Rigel. I ignored her pessimism. Deploy the surveillance drones. Standard observation protocol. Keep them high in the atmosphere. We'll start with global data collection before focusing on individual specimens. 6 hours later, we were all huddled around the main view screen, mandibles agape. Did that human just inject poison into his face? Gasped Rigel. Apparently it's called Botox. According to their information networks, it's a neurotoxin that paralyzes facial muscles to reduce the appearance of skin folds, Plex explained, his voice a mixture of horror and fascination. And they do this voluntarily? I asked. For aesthetic purposes, confirmed Plex. Oh, look at this feed from Drone 7. That human is deliberately exposing her skin to ultraviolet radiation. Their star emits cancer-causing rays, and she's paying for exposure. Fascinating, I murmured. Direct Drone 12 to that urban center. I want to observe their consumption habits. The drone's feed showed humans in a structure they called a restaurant, willingly placing objects into their mouths that were literally on fire. They're eating combustion, shrieked Rigel. Combustion. It's a delicacy called flambe, read Plex from the data stream. They ignite ethanol on their nutrition, and then consume it while still partially in flames. I felt a newfound respect blossoming for these bizarre creatures. What evolutionary pressure could possibly create a species so casually dismissive of mortal danger? Commander, Drone 4 is malfunctioning. Rigel suddenly called out. It's losing altitude over a settlement in a region they call Florida. Stabilize it, I ordered. I can't. There's some kind of electromagnetic interference. It's going to crash into that backyard where that human is. Is he cooking animal flesh over an open flame? They call it a barbecue, offered Plex helpfully. The weapons systems are activating. Rigel's voice rose to a panicked squeal. The plasma cannon is charging. Override it, I commanded. Too late. We watched in horror as a concentrated beam of superheated plasma capable of melting through the hull of a standard battlecruiser struck the human directly between his shoulder blades. Time seemed to stop. This was it. First contact, forced by our incompetence. The beginning of an interstellar incident. Perhaps even war. The human staggered forward slightly. The cooking implement he was holding clattered to the ground. He reached around awkwardly, trying to touch the spot on his back. Did we vaporize his spinal column? Whispered Rigel. The human turned, looking up at the sky with confusion. Then, inexplicably, his face contorted in a way we would later learn was a smile. "Oh," he shouted. That was awesome. Like the world's best deep tissue massage. "Hey, is someone up there? Can you do that again but a little lower? I've got this knot right above my tailbone that's been killing me." The three of us stared at the view screen in complete silence. "Commander," Plex finally said, his voice faint. "I believe we may need to update our research parameters." Indeed, I agreed weakly. It seems humans are even more resilient than we thought. This is a disaster of galactic proportions. Rigel paced the command deck, all four of her limbs gesticulating wildly. We've violated the prime directive of non-interference. The High Council will have our tentacles mounted on their chamber walls. I rubbed my frontal sensory nodes, feeling the onset of a stress headache. Let's not catastrophize. We need to assess the situation calmly. Calmly? Plex's voice modulator cracked with hysteria. "Commander, we just shot a pre-FTL sentient with a Class 3 plasma weapon that can melt through reinforced starship hulls, and his response was to ask for another one. Nothing about this situation calls for calm." The human this Florida man, as the drone's data banks had labeled him, continued to stare upward, shielding his eyes against the sun, apparently trying to locate the source of his impromptu massage. "I've reviewed our options," I announced, "and there's only one logical course of action. We must make first contact." Rigel's bioluminescent patches flashed crimson with alarm. "Are you suffering from atmospheric toxicity, Commander? That's explicitly forbidden. So is firing weapons at indigenous species, but here we are." I straightened my ceremonial collar, a nervous gesture I'd never quite eliminated from academy days. We've already broken protocol. Our duty now is to mitigate potential damage. Prepare the diplomatic contact pod. 20 minutes later, our small contact vessel touched down in the human's backyard, flattening several decorative flora. The human, who we would soon learn was named Jack Mercer, stood watching our descent with his mouth slightly open, clutching a cylindrical container of fermented grain liquid. "Holy shit," he said eloquently as our entry hatch descended and I emerged, flanked by my reluctant crew members. "Greetings, Earth Sentient," I began, activating our universal translator. "We come in peace and profound apology for the weapon's discharge that struck your dorsal region. I assure you it was entirely accidental and not representative of our intentions toward your species." The human blinked several times. Then, to our astonishment, he laughed a strangely pleasant sound despite the alarming display of dental structures. "You guys shot me with that beam thing?" He pointed to his back. "That was you?" "Yes," I admitted, my head crest drooping with shame. "We await your judgment and accept any reasonable punishment your planetary authorities deem appropriate." Jack took a long sip from his container. "Nah, man, we're good. Actually felt pretty great. Popped something back into place that's been bothering me since college football." He paused, studying us with surprising composure for a being making first contact with extraterrestrial life. "Hey, you guys hungry?" I've got plenty of burgers, and my buddies all canceled on me anyway. Something about a hurricane warning, bunch of wimps. And that was how we found ourselves seated at Jack Mercer's outdoor dining fixture, attempting to process both his extraordinary resilience and hospitality. "You're not going to believe this," whispered Plex after scanning the burgers. With his portable analyzer, but these food patties are composed of muscle tissue from another Earth species, deliberately charred over combustion, and he's about to willingly place them in his acid-filled digestive cavity. "So fascinating," I murmured, accepting the plate Jack handed me. "Just Jack is fine." He settled into his chair, completely at ease. "So, you guys are, what, studying humans or something?" "Indeed," I confirmed, watching in horror as he bit into his burger, the acid in his mouth beginning its gruesome work. "We are xenobiologists specializing in resilient species." Jack nodded thoughtfully. Cool. "Hey, you want some hot sauce on that?" He held up a bottle containing what appeared to be red liquid. Plex scanned it discreetly. "Commander," he hissed, "this substance contains capsaicin, a chemical so caustic it triggers pain receptors. It's literally a defense mechanism evolved by plants to prevent consumption." "No thank you," I said hastily. Jack shrugged, pouring generous amounts onto his food. "Your loss. Nothing better than feeling your face melt off after a good bite." "You enjoy pain?" Rigel asked, her speech appendage quivering. "Not pain exactly," Jack clarified, taking another bite and somehow speaking while chewing, a horrifying multitasking ability. "Just, intensity. Like when you go skydiving and your stomach does that dropping thing, or when you eat something so spicy your eyes water. Gets the heart pumping, "Fascinating," I said, genuinely enthralled despite my terror. "And is this pursuit of danger common among humans?" "Oh yeah," Jack nodded enthusiastically. "My sister Tanya does free climbing that's scaling cliff faces without safety equipment. My buddy Marcus swims with sharks for vacation. And my neighbor Tom eats at this sushi place that got shut down 3 times for health code violations. He says that's how you know it's authentic." Jack laughed. "Humans will do just about anything for a thrill." Rigel had stopped moving entirely, a defense mechanism of her species when confronted with existential horror. "And what about you, Jack Mercer?" I asked, fascinated by this cavalier attitude toward mortality. "What dangerous activities do you pursue?" Jack grinned, displaying those alarming teeth again. "Well, I was a smoke jumper for a while, that's parachuting into forest fires to fight them on the ground. Did some bull riding on the amateur circuit. These days I mostly stick to motorcycle racing and the occasional ultramarathon through Death Valley." He took another swig from his container. "Nothing too crazy." I exchanged glances with Plex, whose 3 eye stalks were now completely rigid with shock. "But perhaps most illuminating," Jack continued, apparently oblivious to our horror, "was my time as a kindergarten teacher. Now that was dangerous. 25 sugar-fueled 5-year-olds with safety scissors? Could talk about living on the edge." It was at that moment I realized our research parameters weren't just inadequate, they were woefully misguided. Humans didn't merely survive in a death world. They thrived on it. Captain's log, supplemental. It has been 3 Earth rotations since our unconventional first contact with the human Jack Mercer. Rather than reporting us to his planetary authorities, Jack has agreed to assist our research. The High Council remains unaware of our protocol breach, and I have decided to continue our mission with this unprecedented opportunity for direct observation. May the cosmic creators forgive my scientific curiosity. I switched off the recorder and gazed out the view screen at Jack's dwelling below. Our ship remained cloaked in orbit, but we now used the diplomatic pod for surface excursions with Jack's permission. Today, he had promised to introduce us to his buddy circle at something called a backyard barbecue party. "Commander, I've analyzed the Earth meteorological data," Plex reported, his middle eye stalk twitching nervously. That hurricane warning Jack mentioned has escalated. The tropical storm designated Hurricane Ophelia has strengthened to Category 4 and altered course. It will make landfall approximately 20 kilometers from our position in 5.2 hours. Rigel's bioluminescent patches pulsed with anxiety. Should we abort the mission? I considered our options. No. This presents a unique research opportunity to observe human disaster response behaviors. Repair the pod. 2 hours later, we found ourselves in Jack's backyard, surrounded by a gathering of humans who seemed remarkably unfazed by both our alien presence and the approaching meteorological catastrophe. "Guys, these are my new friends from, way up north," Jack announced vaguely to the assembled humans. We had agreed to maintain partial secrecy about our origins, though I suspected Jack's associates believed us to be from a political entity called Canada rather than another planet entirely. "This is Maxine," Jack said, gesturing to a tall female with vibrantly colored cranial filaments, former Olympic medalist in something called the biathlon. "That's shooting targets while cross-country skiing," Maxine explained, noticing our confusion. She shrugged casually. "Basically running yourself to exhaustion, then trying to control your breathing enough to fire a rifle accurately." Plex subtly adjusted his translator, certain he'd misunderstood. "And this mountain of a man is Darius," Jack continued, indicating a human male with musculature so pronounced it seemed anatomically improbable. "Professional strongman competitor. Once pulled a commercial airplane with his teeth." "It was just a small commuter jet," Darius said modestly. "And I used a harness. The teeth thing was just for show." "Still crushed a steel bar in his mouth, though," added Jack with evident admiration. "The others are Elena, who free dives to depths that would crush our exoskeletons," Jack pointed to a serene-looking female, "and Trevor, who eats those ghost pepper things for YouTube." 7 million subscribers, Trevor announced proudly, his voice strangely raspy. "Turns out people love watching other people suffer." I was frantically recording mental notes for our research when Elena glanced at her communication device. "Hey guys, hurricane update. They've upgraded Ophelia to Category 5. Evacuation orders just went mandatory for the coastal zones." "Sweet," exclaimed Trevor. "Jack, your surfboard still in the garage?" "You are not going hurricane surfing again," Maxine scolded. "Remember what happened during Hurricane Irma?" "Yeah," rode the swell of my life. Trevor high-fived Jack. Another bizarre human ritual we'd learned involved slapping palms together as a sign of shared enthusiasm for potentially fatal activities. "Excuse me," I interrupted, "but should we not be concerned about imminent danger? Perhaps begin evacuation procedures?" Jack waved dismissively. "We're on high ground here. House is hurricane rated. We'll be fine." As if summoned by his cavalier attitude, Jack's communication device emitted a shrill alert sound. "Damn," he muttered, reading the screen. "The storm surge is going to hit the Silver Palms retirement community on the coast. They're still evacuating, but they're short on vehicles." The atmosphere changed instantly. These humans, who moments ago had been casually discussing recreational activities during a natural disaster, suddenly focused with startling intensity. "I've got my truck," Darius said immediately. "My SUV can take 6, maybe 8 if they're small," added Elena. "I'll call my brother." Maxine was already manipulating her device. "He's got that passenger van for his band." I exchanged bewildered glances with my crew. "You intend to travel toward the approaching hurricane?" "Those are old folks down there," Jack explained, already collecting objects from inside his dwelling. "They can't move fast, and some need medical equipment. If they don't get out before the surge hits," he didn't finish the sentence. "But the risk to yourselves," Rigel protested, "is nothing compared to the certainty they'll die if nobody helps," Darius interrupted, his massive frame suddenly imposing. "Look," Jack said, tossing packages into his vehicle, You guys should head back to your ship or whatever. Get to safety. This isn't your fight. We can help, I heard myself say, surprising even myself. Our pod has significant transportation capacity. And I have medical training, added Plex, his three eye stalks blinking in what I recognized as his expression of resolve. Rigel stared at us both. Have you ingested hallucinogens? We should be leaving this death trap immediately. Actually, Trevor said, we could use someone to coordinate evacuation routes. The coastal roads will be jammed, but if someone had, say, an aerial view and could guide us around traffic. 20 minutes later, we were flying our diplomatic pod through strengthening winds, following Jack's vehicle convoy toward the coast. Through the view screen, I could see the monstrous storm approaching a swirling vortex of devastation that humans had merely given a feminine name rather than fleeing to another continent. Commander Rigel's voice was quiet. I don't understand. These humans are not military personnel or designated emergency responders. They have no obligation to risk themselves. The storm will claim them as readily as those they seek to rescue. I watched Jack's vehicle plowing forward through increasingly hostile conditions. I believe, I said slowly, we've been fundamentally misunderstanding human resilience, Rigel. It isn't merely physical adaptability that makes them remarkable. On the horizon, sheets of rain obscured the coastline. Lightning split the darkening sky. Hurricane Ophelia was arriving, and the humans were driving straight toward it. The coastal retirement community was already partially submerged when we arrived. Ocean water pushed inland with frightening determination, while wind-driven debris turned ordinary objects into lethal projectiles. To my species, this environment was unsurvivable. To humans, apparently it was merely an inconvenience. Diplomatic pod, this is Jack. We've got 2 buildings to evacuate. Can you handle the east wing while we take the west? Affirmative, I responded, maneuvering our craft as close as possible to the structure. Though I must point out that our atmospheric analysis indicates wind speeds approaching 190 of your kilometers per hour. This is well beyond safety parameters for your species. Jack's laughter crackled through our communication system. Yeah, well, don't tell the hurricane that. It might get cocky. Through the view screen, I watched in astonishment as Jack and his associates battled horizontal rain to reach the building. Darius was carrying what appeared to be an elderly human in each arm, while Maxine guided 3 more through the surging water. Commander, reported Plex as we extended our craft's ramp to the second-story balcony. I'm detecting significant structural instability in both buildings. The foundation is eroding from the storm surge. Understood. Let's work quickly. We assisted 23 elderly humans aboard our craft, many expressing surprisingly little concern about either the approaching hurricane or being rescued by extraterrestrials. Well, you're certainly not from the government, remarked one white-haired female as Rigel helped her to a seat. You respond too efficiently. Jack's team had successfully evacuated their assigned building, but reported trouble with our rendezvous pod. Roads are completely flooded now, he communicated. We're going to try to reach higher ground at the community center about a mile inland. Meet us there? Confirmed, I replied, lifting our craft away from the crumbling structure just as a section collapsed into the rising water. We were nearly at the designated meeting point when disaster struck. A massive floating object later identified as a yacht torn free from its moorings slammed into our pod's propulsion array. Warning systems blared as we lost altitude control. Brace for impact, I shouted, struggling with the controls as our craft spiraled toward the community center's roof. The crash was jarring but not catastrophic, though our diagnostics reported comprehensive system failures. We were grounded, our craft wedged precariously on the building's edge with its exit ramp now suspended 5 stories above ground level. Commander, Plex called from the passenger compartment. We have injured humans requiring medical attention. and rising water levels, added Rigel grimly. This structure will be compromised within the hour. Just as I was calculating our increasingly limited options, a pounding came from the craft's emergency hatch. "Hey, space buddies, you alive in there?" Jack's voice, somehow audible even through the howling wind. "We are functional but stranded," I responded through the external communication system. "Our craft is inoperable, and we have injured humans aboard." "Figured," came Jack's reply. "Listen, we've got a plan. Open your bottom hatch." "The drop is approximately 15 of your meters," I protested. "And the structural integrity of this building is failing." "Yeah, we noticed. Trust me, okay?" Against all logic and safety protocols, I ordered the hatch opened. Through the opening, I could see Jack and Darius on the roof below. They had somehow scaled the outside of the building during a Category 5 hurricane. "Start sending people down," Jack called up, one at a time. To my amazement, Darius positioned himself beneath the opening. "I'll catch them," he shouted. And he did, catching each human plex, and Rigel carefully lowered, before passing them to Jack, who guided them inside the building. When all 23 evacuees were safely transferred, Jack looked up at us. "Your turn." "Our species has significantly more mass than humans," I explained. "The impact force would be fine," Jack interrupted. "Darius here used to catch his ex-wife for their circus act. She was dressed as a cannonball at the time." I looked at my crew. Well, this has certainly been an unorthodox mission. One by one, we jumped. One by one, Darius caught us, the impact driving him knee-deep into the increasingly flooded rooftop with each catch, yet he remained standing. Once inside, we joined an assembly of humans who had sought shelter from the storm. Many were injured, wet, and frightened, but organizing themselves with remarkable efficiency. Maxine had established a medical station where Plex immediately offered his assistance. Elena was distributing emergency supplies. Trevor, surprisingly, was entertaining frightened children with elaborate hand shadows. "Your species," I said to Jack as we watched the organized chaos, "continues to defy my understanding." Jack shrugged. "We look out for each other. That's just what humans do." The storm raged for hours, yet the human spirit never dampened. When a section of roof collapsed, trapping Rigel beneath debris, Jack and Darius risked their lives to free her, ignoring their own injuries. When rising water threatened the lower floors, humans formed chains to move everyone higher, the strongest carrying the weakest without hesitation. By the time Hurricane Ophelia finally moved inland, weakening to a tropical storm, I had completely revised my assessment of humanity. 3 days later, standing beside our repaired craft, fixed largely thanks to human ingenuity and Darius's improbable strength, I made my final log entry. Captain's log, Galactic date 4539.2. Recommendation to the High Council, Earth classification to be immediately updated. Humans are not merely death world survivors. They are protectors. Their resilience extends beyond physical adaptation to encompass a moral imperative I can only describe as heroism. The willingness to risk oneself for others without expectation of reward. This quality makes them not a threat to galactic peace, as previously feared, but potentially its greatest defenders. I formally request first contact protocols be initiated as soon as possible. These are not primitives to be studied. These are allies to be embraced. As we prepared to depart, Jack approached, sporting several new bandages and a characteristically casual grin. "So, heading home to report on the primitive Earthlings?" he asked. "Something like that," I admitted, though primitive is no longer the term I would use. "Cool, cool." He rocked back on his heels, looking skyward. "Hey, before you go, any chance I could get another shot from that plasma thing? My back is killing me after lifting all those roof panels." Despite everything we'd witnessed, or perhaps because of it my crew and I burst into laughter, a behavior we'd apparently adopted from our human associates. Perhaps next time, Jack Mercer, I said, extending my primary appendage in the human gesture of farewell. The universe is vast, but something tells me our paths will cross again. Looking forward to it, he replied, shaking my appendage vigorously. And hey, next time bring snacks, preferably something that won't dissolve our insides. We may be tough, but we've got limits. As our craft lifted off, I couldn't help but wonder if that was actually true. In my extensive research across the galaxy, I had yet to find those limits in humans. And I suspected the rest of the universe wasn't ready to find out.